Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The night cracked open with 6 words that ripped through the Mercer household like glass shattering on tile. I've been sleeping with Connor. So what? Madison Holt tossed her leather bag onto the couch, kicked off one heel, and smirked like she had just delivered a punchline instead of detonated her marriage. The glow from a hallway light framed her like a stage actress, every gesture dramatic, every laugh rehearsed. Across the dining table, her husband, Elliot Holt, sat motionless, a folded envelope resting under his palm. He didn't look at the new necklace glinting at her throat or the fresh shade of crimson lipstick she hadn't worn in years. He didn't even ask who Connor was. He already knew. Nothing to say, she taunted, pouring herself a generous glass of Merlot. God, Elliot, you're so predictable. You'll just sulk until you forget it ever happened. He slid the envelope across the table. You'll want to read this. She didn't. She laughed, called him dramatic, and walked upstairs humming off key. But Elliot's silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. For months he had watched Madison become someone else. Someone who came home at 1 a.m. reeking of cologne that wasn't hers. Someone whose business dinners ended at hotels 40 miles away. Someone who mocked him to her friends, as if he were invisible. She thought she was clever, that he'd never see the receipts she buried in their joint account or the late-night messages she forgot to delete. But Elliot had seen enough. Their routines had become a cruel parody. In the mornings, she'd glide into the kitchen in tailored blazers, barking into her phone about client calls while he flipped pancakes for a wife who barely touched her plate. She wanted status, admiration, the thrill of being desired by men with corner offices and expense cards. He wanted honesty, connection, a family life built on more than appearances. And when she traded fidelity for promotions, Elliot began writing. He'd once been the man who ghost-wrote Madison's early speeches, polishing her clumsy phrasing, giving her a voice that impressed boardrooms. She'd forgotten that. She'd forgotten that every cadence, every clever line people praised her for had come from him. Now, those same skills became his weapon. The speech he composed started as her usual rhetoric, about ethics, community, vision. But then, halfway through, the tone shifted. Subtle at first, then devastatingly clear. Hotel invoices disguised as client dinners. Trips to Denver and Chicago that didn't match expense reports. Phrases lifted straight from private messages with her superior, Connor Jameson. Each mentorship moment framed as the backbone of her rise. It wasn't just a speech. It was a confession she never gave. At precisely 9 a.m. Monday morning, while Madison would sip her coffee believing she had silenced Elliot with humiliation, that speech would arrive in the inboxes of the company's board members, compliance officers, and even 2 journalists. Scheduled. Irreversible. Elliot didn't need to raise his voice. He only needed time. Because Madison's empire wasn't about to fall tomorrow. It was already falling. Sunday mornings in the Holt household had once been lazy, filled with sunlight, the smell of fresh coffee, and Elliot teasing Madison about her habit of stealing the last slice of toast. Now it was silence. Heavy, unspoken, unnatural silence. Madison padded into the kitchen barefoot, her hair still damp from a shower, wearing an overpriced t-shirt from a hotel spa in Chicago. She didn't glance at Elliot. She didn't mention her confession. She rummaged through the fridge, muttered about expired almond milk, and tossed a passive-aggressive, "Could you maybe get the good granola next time?" over her shoulder. Elliot trimmed the hedges outside, the buzz of the trimmer masking the sound of his watch ticking down toward 9 a.m. He wasn't sulking, as she believed. He was counting minutes, because at 9:03 a.m., the first email would land. By 8:47, Madison scrolled lazily through her phone while sipping bitter coffee. At 8:52, her screen pinged, subject line, draft keynote, ethics and legacy in leadership. She frowned briefly, assumed it was some draft she'd forgotten to delete. With a dismissive eye roll, she skimmed the opening slide, saw her headshot and name across a banner reading ethics and legacy in leadership. She muttered, "Who writes this crap?" and swiped past it. She didn't notice the shift in tone halfway through. Didn't notice the embedded links that looked like citations but led to damning receipts, hotel bookings, expense claims, client dinners that never happened. She closed the file after 2 minutes, shrugged, and tossed her phone onto the counter. He's really doing the silent treatment thing, she scoffed to herself, walking back upstairs. Elliot, watching from the window, allowed the faintest flicker of satisfaction. She didn't know. Not yet. She thought she'd wounded him. She thought this was about pride, jealousy, or a bruised ego. But this wasn't about heartbreak. It was about exposure. At 9:05 a.m., across town, Connor Jameson, the senior vice president who had been both Madison's boss and her lover, sat frozen in his glass office. He was on the phone with a partner when the email arrived, his assistant hovering nervously nearby. At first, he thought it was Madison's latest draft. But as he read further, his blood pressure spiked. The speech detailed mentorship that overlapped suspiciously with Madison's rapid promotions. It referenced last year's Denver summit, where a lateral hire had been approved without panel interviews or HR review. The timeline was damning. This can't be real, Connor muttered, snapping at his assistant to reschedule his 8:15 PR call. Sweat darkened his collar. He dialed Madison, but she didn't answer. Instead, he dialed Elliot. Elliot answered with a calm S. "This is Connor Jameson." The voice hissed, tight and controlled. "Where did that file come from? Who did you send it to?" Elliot sipped his coffee, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Scheduled send. Board members. Compliance. A couple outside eyes. It's set for noon unless I cancel it." "You're bluffing." Connor's voice cracked on the word. "Am I?" Elliot replied, and ended the call. Inside, Madison hummed off key upstairs, oblivious. She had no idea that Connor, the man she believed would protect her, was in a closed-door war room with executives and lawyers, trying to explain away an email dripping with evidence. An email that looked like she had written it herself. By 10 a.m., messages began appearing in her inbox. A curt, "We need to talk," from the HR director. A schedule emergency compliance review from the legal team. Madison dismissed them at first, assuming it was routine. She was too focused on her reflection in the bathroom mirror, carefully applying lipstick for the brunch she had scheduled with girlfriends. She didn't know Elliot had already cut her off. He wasn't waiting for apologies, wasn't waiting for explanations. He had blocked her number on every platform, removed her access to his accounts, and left only one path open, through official channels. By noon, the full storm hit. The speech Elliot crafted was already circulating among board members, whispered about in hushed tones, forwarded in encrypted threads. Every line sharpened like a blade, exposing Madison not just as a woman who cheated, but as an executive who had bent policies, falsified expense reports, and blurred the lines between mentorship and manipulation. At 12:17 p.m., Connor slammed his office door, pacing like a trapped animal. "We have to control this," he barked into his phone. "Shut it down. Recall the file." "It's too late," a compliance officer replied coldly. "It's mirrored to the investor drive." Back at home, Madison finally opened the envelope Elliot had left on the dining table days earlier. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through screenshots of text messages, Lyft receipts from the wrong addresses, hotel invoices cross-referenced with her calendar. Each page was a nail in the coffin. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she typed frantically, "Elliot, please, can we talk? I didn't mean to hurt you like that. We can fix this before anyone else gets involved." The reply came instantly, but not from Elliot. "This number is no longer monitored. All communication must go through legal representation." Her breath caught in her throat. For the first time since her smug confession, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Fear. Because Elliot hadn't just walked away. He had already burned the bridge behind him and lit her career on fire in the process. By Monday morning, the whole household felt like a stage set where the lead actress had forgotten her lines. Madison moved through the kitchen as if nothing had happened, pouring almond milk in her coffee, scrolling through her phone, and humming the same careless tune. But the air was heavier, thick with something she didn't recognize yet. She wouldn't have to wait long. At 8:40 a.m., her phone buzzed with a notification from the HR director. "Emergency compliance meeting. 9:15 a.m. attendance required." Her brow furrowed. Madison hated early meetings, especially one she didn't control. She dismissed it, assuming it was some routine check-in. But when the second email arrived at 8:52 from the legal department, subject line, urgent, keynote draft circulation inquiry, her fingers tightened around the mug. She clicked it open. The first line read, "The draft keynote titled Ethics and Legacy in Leadership has been reviewed by 6 members of the board, external consultants, and compliance. Please confirm its origin immediately." Madison froze. Her stomach lurched. That was the same file she had skimmed yesterday, the one she assumed was junk. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She dropped the phone onto the counter and whispered, "Elliot." But Elliot wasn't listening. He was outside, sipping coffee on the back deck, watching the neighbor's dog bark at squirrels. The phone in his pocket buzzed with an unknown number. He answered casually. "This is Connor Jameson," the voice said, ragged and sharp. "We're in a crisis. That file, it's everywhere." "What did you do?" Elliot's response was measured, each word precise. "Scheduled release. Noon. Unless I cancel it, you'll ruin both of us." Connor's voice cracked, echoing with the panic of a man whose empire was slipping. Elliot let silence stretch, then replied, "You ruined yourselves." He ended the call. Inside, Madison frantically dialed Connor. Straight to voicemail. She tried again, then again. Nothing. By 9:10, she was rushing into the office in a Navy power suit, hair tied neatly, heels clicking against marble floors. She forced her lips into a smile as she greeted the receptionist, but the receptionist didn't return it. Instead, she said in a clipped tone, "They're waiting for you inside." Madison's stomach churned. The conference room was colder than usual. No catered breakfast spread, no friendly chatter. Just 3 people seated across the long mahogany table. The CEO, the director of HR, and the head of corporate compliance. "Ms. Holt," the CEO began, his voice sharp, "we've convened this meeting to address the keynote draft that circulated this morning." Madison forced a laugh. "Oh, that. It was just a draft I must have." "Don't," the HR director interrupted, sliding a printed policy across the table. The section highlighted in yellow, "All romantic relationships with supervisors must be disclosed prior to eligibility for promotion consideration." Her blood ran cold. The compliance officer dropped a stack of documents onto the table. Hotel bookings, expense reports, calendar entries. "We cross-referenced these with company accounts. 6 hotel stays, 12 dinners, all signed by Mr. Jameson, all overlapping with your promotions." Madison's fingers twitched, her throat dry. "We weren't exclusive. It wasn't serious." "Policy doesn't measure seriousness," the compliance officer said flatly. Madison turned to the CEO, desperate. "Kinda knew about this. He said it wouldn't be a problem." The CEO's eyes narrowed. "And now you're shifting blame onto your superior?" "Ms. Holt, this is bigger than a personal misstep. This is a legal liability." She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, the HR director slid a plain white envelope across the table. "What's this?" Madison asked, her voice trembling. "Voluntary leave pending internal investigation," the HR director replied. "Sign it, and we review quietly. Refuse, and we proceed with termination for cause. Immediate loss of benefits. Revoke stock options." Madison's hand hovered over the paper. The walls felt like they were closing in. "Wait," she stammered. "This isn't fair. Someone set me up. That speech, it wasn't mine." The CEO leaned forward, voice icy. "It came from your account, drafted in your cadence, mirrored to our servers. If it wasn't yours, prove it. Otherwise, sign." The pen slid toward her. She felt the eyes of every person in the room pressing down on her like weights. Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to accuse Elliot, to tell them her husband had sabotaged her. But she knew. How could she prove it? Every receipt, every message, every hidden trail was already tied to her. She signed. Her signature wavered across the page like a confession in ink. By 10:30, she was escorted out of the building by 2 security guards. No one met her eyes. Not the interns who once idolized her. Not the colleagues who used to lean on her for advice. The whispers were worse than shouting. Hushed, sharp, carrying just enough for her to hear. Outside, she stood on the sidewalk gripping her phone, so tightly her knuckles whitened. She dialed Connor again. Voicemail. Finally, she typed a frantic message. "Connor, you need to fix this. I didn't send that speech. You know me. You know I wouldn't." No reply. Instead, She noticed something on LinkedIn. Jason Morrow, head of PR, and once Elliot's best friend, had been promoted quietly a few months ago. A new title, Strategic Brand Integrity Oversight. Her pulse raced. Jason, Elliot, the legacy speechwriter circle. She remembered that name now, some consulting side gig Elliot and Jason had years ago. She had mocked it as a club for men who thought metaphors could save the world. And now, she realized, they had saved it, just not for her. Her world collapsed in stages. First, the job, then the reputation. Now, even Connor was distancing himself. She wasn't just isolated. She was surrounded. Back at home, Elliot sat in silence, watching his plan unfold exactly as written. Madison thought she had burned him. She didn't realize he'd been sharpening the blade of his revenge for months. And the best part? He hadn't even delivered the final cut yet. Tuesday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Madison dressed in black, no longer the confident Navy suit from yesterday, but a somber, wrinkled outfit meant to signal resilience. Her heels clicked down the marble lobby of headquarters, but no one looked at her anymore. Even Amy, the receptionist who used to bake her birthday cookies, kept her eyes on her monitor. The security gate rejected her badge with a sharp beep. Red light. She tapped it again. Nothing. Restricted access. One of the uniformed guards said flatly, "We'll escort you upstairs." Madison's cheeks burned. Through the tinted glass, she caught the reflection of junior employees whispering behind coffee cups, their eyes wide with curiosity. She forced her shoulders back and walked ahead, trying to project composure she no longer felt. The boardroom on the 20th floor was colder than ice. 12 members sat in silence, printouts and tablets in front of them. At the far end sat Connor Jameson, pale, sweating through his shirt, his eyes glued to a legal pad. He didn't glance at her. Not once. The general counsel began without preamble. "Ms. Holt, the board has concluded its internal review of the keynote circulated yesterday. Findings confirm violation of executive ethics and promotion compliance standards. Effective immediately, your position is terminated for cause. Stock options revoked. Severance rescinded." Madison's throat tightened. "I didn't write that speech," she said, voice cracking. "Someone." The VP of Risk raised a hand, cutting her off. "It came from your account. Metadata, timestamps, embedded links, airtight. No breaches." Her eyes darted at Connor, desperate. "Connor, tell them. Tell them it wasn't me." Connor finally looked up, but his gaze wasn't sympathetic. It was hollow, terrified, self-preserving. "I can't," he whispered. "I can't prove otherwise." The room stayed still. Then the projector screen flickered to life. New slide. Updated consultant engagements. Q3 forward. And there it was. A name Madison never expected to see again in that setting. Elia Holt, strategic communications consultant. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The CEO's voice was calm, clinical. "Mr. Holt's involvement has been verified. He followed proper protocol. His work product will support the transition of leadership moving forward." She swayed where she stood. It hit her all at once. Elia hadn't just exposed her. He had positioned himself to replace her. The man she mocked for being too quiet, too unambitious, too ordinary had written her downfall and built his new beginning in the ashes. A whisper from one of the board members carried across the room. Why didn't she just leave him quietly? Madison's chest constricted. The walls of glass seemed to press in on her. "Ms. Holt," the general counsel said evenly, "we're done here." No security escorted her this time. She walked out under her own power, but each step down that corridor felt heavier, like her body was made of stone. Behind the tinted walls, employees leaned away, their silence louder than ridicule. By the time she reached the sidewalk outside, her access card no longer functioned, her company car disabled. She was nobody. Back in a modest lecture hall across town, Elliot stood at a wooden podium, his voice steady as he read the very speech that had ended Madison's career. Not to a boardroom, not to investors, but to students, professors, and ordinary people who still believed words could mean something. "This was written for someone else," he said softly. "But now, I think you'll understand it better. No gloating, no bitterness, just quiet ownership." Madison sat in her apartment hours later, scrolling through news articles that hinted at internal upheaval, seeing her name whispered in legal filings. while Elliot's reputation rose as the man who rescued corporate integrity. Her hands shook. She wanted to scream, to deny, to claw her way back. But she couldn't escape the truth. Because Elliot hadn't just caught her, he had ended her with her own voice. And the silence that followed was the loudest revenge of all.